Well, Mr. Layton, I never broke my word. Mr. Harper, what he said, he would have been in complete disagreement with what he said a year ago. A year ago, he was saying, we'll stay until the job is not done, and so on. I always said the same thing. If we accepted to go from 2009 to 2011, it's because Mr. Harper prepared nothing for the rotation. Would have left Afghanistan without any preparation. You need to prepare these things. You don't leave Afghanistan as you leave a camping. You need to organize that with your allies. It's what I will do. One of the first things I will do as Prime Minister, I will announce to our NATO allies and to the government of Afghanistan that indeed 2011 is a serious end date that we will respect and we have a mandate.
Mr. Harper, if you will admit that if the situation is so tough in Afghanistan, certainly a large part of that is because of the error made by George Bush by going in Iraq. And thus, do you realize today that you were making a huge error by supporting Bush and Australia in a given speech that was deeply inspired? And that was a huge error you made at that time. Would you make the same decision today then you were proposing Canada to do in 2003?
Okay, well, Mr. Harper, then I've made it very clear Canada is not going to Iraq. So no, obviously,
it's not a question I asked.
Obviously, you know the answer to that question. But let's be clear
about.
I
want to hear it.
Let's be clear about Afghanistan.
Do you admit it was an error of George Bush, and you made the same error?
It was absolutely an error.
So you made an error at that time.
It's obviously clear. The evaluation of weapons of mass destruction proved not to be not to be correct. That's absolutely true.
So you made an error.
That's why we're not sending anybody to Iraq.
No, we're only not sending anyone to Iraq at the time.
On Afghanistan, let's remember, Afghanistan is a mission. It's not a George Bush mission. It's a mission of the United Nations. In the United States, both parties, Senator Obama is committed to increase. Senator Obama has committed to increase American commitment to Afghanistan.
That, but what I said
is that you're against the mission in Afghanistan.
If you had been Prime Minister in 2003, Canadians and Quebecers soldiers would be today in Iraq.
That's not
true or not?
That's not my position. He said no.
I mean, that was your position as leader of the opposition was to Canada should be part of the coalition willing. You argued it. You made the speech. Let's move on from that. The current mission is not a UN mission. The initial NATO process received a UN sanction. It's not the same thing as a UN mission. And if we're going to actually make progress to stabilize Afghanistan, we have got to ensure that it's not perceived as solely a Western nation initiative led by the U.S. That's why 2011 is too late to change the mission, but too early to leave. We need to have a United Nations mission that involves far more countries. We need to go back to do that. And by the way, you're boasting about the fact that most of our development assistance is going to Afghanistan. That's a terrible thing that's happened, is that CEDA's missions have become so politicized that we're turning our back on Africa. We're not helping the poorest of the poor. It's becoming part of our mission in Afghanistan to distort the mission on international development assistance. We need to make poverty history, and I want to know where the other leaders are on 0.7% of our GNP going to overseas development assistance.
Mr. Harper is a very imprudent man because of his ideology that is so close to the views of George W. Bush, and he expressed with the words of the Prime Minister of Australia, the Conservative Prime Minister. He is a very imprudent man. What he did about Iraq, he almost did the same about Afghanistan. Now, during the election, he's saying, okay, I will respect the 2011 end date. He said the opposite months after months after months. Our allies hope he will change his mind. We need to have a Prime Minister who will say the same thing in Canada and abroad, that will be trustworthy, that we will believe his words. He will not change always his mind because of his imprudent ideology.
Jack Layton.
A great many Canadians don't want us to continue in Afghanistan until 2011. That's clear. A vote for the Liberals or the Conservatives will not change our long-term commitment or engagement there. And in fact, it will prevent us from reaching some of the targets we have for international aid and assistance, like the Make Poverty History campaign. What we propose is to take the savings when we bring our troops home and use those savings in order to invest in saving lives through the anti-poverty programs. We call it the peace dividend.
Okay,
that represents Canadian values better.
A couple of shots here, so I got to give Mr. Harper 20 seconds to respond. Well, I do appreciate Stéphane Dion, the Liberal Party support on the resolution that we passed. The truth is, Mr. Dion's position on this mission changed 3 times over the last 3 years, but at least now it's the right position, and I'll give him credit for that.
If you take that,
let me just say this, which is that the parliamentary resolution is precisely what I have communicated to President Sarkozy, to President Bush, to the future presidential candidates, to Prime Minister Brown, to President Karzai. Everybody knows this is Canada's position, and I'm encouraging them to work towards similar goals.
Okay.
Little response here?
Well, to the contrary, you changed your mind. You said again and again and again that we don't need an end date. It would be a mistake, a failure. We need to stay until the job is not done, whatever that means. I always supported an end date. I want my Canada back. Canadians want their Canada back, a Canada that we may trust in the world, Canada speaking for the cause of justice in the world, not a Canada always following the views of George Bush.
Okay,
even our American friends don't want it anymore.
That is the last one.
Good evening. I'm a retiree building my shed in the backyard here, and I have a question for all you potential prime ministers. My question is, if I should elect you prime minister, what's the very first thing that you're going to do when you get into office? And I don't want any bull feathers, baffled brains answer. I just want the real issue that you're going to tackle.
The first thing we'll do is replace Mr. Harper's reckless $50 billion corporate tax cut with investments in the key issues that are affecting families today: the infrastructure of their communities, income security, particularly for low income and seniors, job creation in the key new sectors of the economy, also including environmental investments. That's the priority of an NDP government under Jack Layton.
Gilles Duceppe.
Well, I know I want to be Prime Minister, and 3 of you won't be Prime Minister neither. Some of you know it, but you don't say it. But very clearly, I know I won't be Prime Minister. That won't stop me of asking the one who will be Prime Minister to start helping the manufacturing sector and the forestry sector, to start helping the workers who are the first victims of that crisis, to start helping the old age workers particularly, to start helping our seniors who are facing the huge challenges with their health and also their revenue, and also to apply Kyoto will put all the pressure and finally may have consequences to the recognition of the Quebec nation.
Thank you.
I think as a woman and a single mom, I'm really good at multitasking, so there'll be more than one thing. But top of the list is we've got to fix our electoral system. We've got to put ourselves on a path to proportional representation so that the will of the voters as expressed in the way people vote is reflected in the House of Commons. And we don't run the risk of false majorities, such as a majority of the seats with a minority of the support. We also need to move forward on the plan to deal with carbon and carbon emissions in a way that stimulates our economy, makes our future more secure. Those are top priorities for Greens. They're top priorities for 80% of Canadians who realize we have a moral obligation to the future to act.
First thing I will do, obviously, is to deal with the crisis that we see in the United States and that is already here in Canada, whatever Mr. Harper may pretend. We need to take care of your savings, of your mortgage, of your pension. I need to sit with the institutions that are regulating our savings or pension, and we need to have a plan for that. The first thing I will do, I will prepare an economic and fiscal update to be sure that Canada will have that right and will protect ourselves against this crisis coming. And after, I will certainly appoint the best cabinet Canada ever had to have a fairer, greener, richer Canada.
Well, obviously the #1 priority of any government has to be to continue to manage Canada during this time of global economic uncertainty.
We will keep our country in surplus. We will make sure we do not raise taxes. In fact, where we can make affordable tax cuts, we'll make them. One of the tax cuts we've talked about in this campaign is increasing the age exemption for our senior citizens. We're also going to bring in a tax credit for first-time home buyers to help the housing industry. We're going to make sure that we reduce the tax on diesel so that we deal with some of the price increases. We're going to take some competitiveness measures. We're going to reduce taxes a little bit more on small business. We're going to be bringing in recommendations of the Red Wilson panel on competitiveness. We're going to be reducing the paper burden on small business. All affordable, meaningful.
I've been listening and waiting for your list, Mr. Harper, because What you haven't done is say that you're going to protect the savings and the pensions and the homes of Canadians and the jobs of those people who are facing these issues around their kitchen table right now. People making ends meet. You're not willing to stand up for them. Your biggest decision, which you didn't include, is to give a $50 billion tax break to Exxon and the banks, and that's wrong. And as to the idea of a meeting, I think an idea of a meeting is good, but are you going to listen to the premiers who are going to attend your meeting, Mr. Dion, and suggest that this new tax idea you have is a bad idea? Premier McGuinty, a Liberal premier, who's going to suggest it's the wrong way to go and who prefers our approach to dealing with the crisis of climate change? I hope you're going to listen to him.
Mr. Dion?
Well,